Hola, amigo. Hola, mi amigo. Hola, amigo. Hola, mi amigo. Por favor, uno momento. Hola, vecino. ¿Te gustaría venir conmigo a la iglesia el domingo? Mi iglesia es muy dorito.
Dorito?
Divertido. Y se puede transformar tu vida de pecado. Pecado. not pecado, but pecanos es muy delicioso. See?
See, I
See?
don't even know.
See?
I don't even know what you're saying.
You speak English.
Yes.
You're not a Spaniard.
Well, I'm a quarter Hispanic, but I don't speak the language.
Seriously?
Yeah, I never learned the language.
Seriously?
What were you saying?
Never mind.
To move on in a sermon. We're in this Superfans series, and I chose Superfan because I am one. I've talked about this a few weeks ago. I mean, I'm a big sports fan. So if it's Cincinnati Reds or Philadelphia 76ers or Miami Dolphins, the greatest football team that's ever played because they only undefeated season 72-73, and the Boise State Broncos, who have convinced me differently in about 9 weeks, who have the best running back in America. You'll know him by name. His name's Ashton Genty. The Boise State football team is very good this year, so stand by as we win a national championship. They opened it to 16 teams. We got a shot. Listen, I'm a super fan. Whenever you're excited about something, you're a fan of something, you talk about it. And we do that all the time. With whatever you're excited. It doesn't have to be a sports thing. It's just if you're a fan about something, you talk about it. I'll tell you what I'm not a fan of, not a super fan of, this, Alcatraz Island. You been there? It's a tourist place. It's a horrible, horrible, horrible place. No one should ever go there. And when I was just out of college, there was this little small Christian school in Southern California that said, hey, we need a teacher, so they gave me a bunch of sixth graders. To this day, they still reach out to me. I know it's them on Facebook and Instagram and stuff because they say Mr. Plew. So I'm still friends with a bunch of them, but somewhere in the world there's 27 of them that know nothing about science because science was right after lunch, right before PE. Who wants to teach science? I didn't. They didn't learn. I didn't teach it, but we've all survived. Every year, they take the sixth grade class at this school to San Francisco. So they said, Kyle, it's your class, take them. So they had it all planned out for me, and we go to San Francisco, and it's pretty fun and everything. And on our scheduled thing of tourist events was to go, you get on a boat, and you go to Alcatraz Island. Alcatraz Island is a horrible prison. It's been shut down for a number of decades now, but it was just like, why are we doing this? So they give you this tour, and they stop at one point, and they say, okay, this is the solitary confinement cells. And solitary confinement back in the day was for the worst of the worst. And you'd go into the cell and they'd shut it. And when they shut it, there is absolutely no light. Like there's nothing. And I'm like, that's horrible. I mean, of all the fears I have in my life, I've confessed here, oh man, darkness. I hate the dark. I mean, there's things that lurk in the dark. There's horrible, I told you before, the house we lived on over here on Wapato. The light switch was at the top of the stairs on the second floor. So you had to turn up, and you had to run in the dark down the stairs before the old lady that lived in the attic got you. Turns out to be my grandma. I should have been nicer to her. So my kids, my sixth graders, like, hey, Mr. Plew, you should do that. Get in the cell, let them close the doors. And I'm like 22, and I'm like, well, that doesn't scare me. So they said, anyone who wants to, and they were all this line of cells, and they were just going to put you in there just for a short time. So you go in there, and then the doors just come, and it is pitch dark. And I'm like, ooh, this is weird. That's like, first 5 seconds, this is crazy. Next 10 seconds, I start crying. Next 30 seconds, I pee my pants. I'm like, get me out of here. It's total darkness. It's the most uncomfortable thing in the world. And I don't even think it lasts 10 seconds. But it felt like forever. And then finally the doors open and I was like, man, in the darkness? I mean, it's just so isolating. It's lonely. You come up with stuff in your head that's not there. Darkness. The Bible has a lot to say about darkness. I'm not a super fan of darkness. I am a super fan of Jesus. And not because it's my job. Because he's changed my life. Not because I was raised in a pastor's home. Because I know Jesus personally as a friend. I just talked to him before I came out on stage. Listen, we talk about Jesus. Those of you that are followers of Jesus, you want to talk about him. Those of you that are not yet followers of Jesus, hang in there. This is one of those sermons where I'm talking to both of you, all of y'all, and everybody in the middle at the same time. And it's a little juggling thing we're going to do. But when those of us who call ourselves followers of Jesus want to talk or bring up Jesus, we get so frustrated. Because we just want to convince people that we're right. But like we've said over the last few weeks or so, if I told you about Santorini, Greece, and I explained it to you, I even showed you a picture. My wife and I are independently wealthy, so we travel constantly throughout Europe. Really, we end up here because my youngest daughter picked it for her wedding. I'm like, I don't even know where Santorini is, and we'll get on a plane. That's it. If I try to explain how awesome Santorini is, this little island in the middle of a bunch of different islands, how cool it is to get around the island, that the 24-hour bakeries that are open, I can tell you, and you're like, You don't have any idea what it is as I talk about. You have to go there and experience it. If you were fortunate enough to get a ticket to Albertson Stadium and you walked into the blue turf to see the Boise State Broncos play this season, you don't have it. Listen, you're like, I've been to a football game before, or I've been to bigger stadiums. You haven't been to Albertson Stadium. It's Joe Albertson's supermarket, but the stadium is ours. All right? Anyone? That's for old people. Listen, we don't have anything else in Boise. There's no Seahawks. There's no Mariners. There's no Spokane Indians. But there's nothing else really in the state of Idaho that people root for. University of Idaho, except Boise State. So when you're part of that, it is enormously, it's loud. You feel like you're all in together. You don't have any idea what that looks like or feels like. You can't comprehend it until you show up and see the blue turf and sit in the congregation of Broncos that are there. Listen, I can talk about the lovely Darlene and how she took my breath away on our wedding day. But you don't know that unless you were there. You're like, oh, I see her right there. Oh, she looks horrible there because I'm next to her. When she came walking down the aisle at First Nazarene Church of Nampa, Idaho, all by herself, and I'm like, woof, wow, shit. If you weren't there, you don't know. It's hard for me to explain to you. Now, the good thing is, she's like 20 there. She still looks 20. I think you would all agree. I love that picture because you can see what a festive atmosphere it was in the fellowship hall of the Nazarene Church. That was it right there. There's no dinner. There's no booze. It's just cake and streamers behind me, all right? But I didn't care because I was marrying the lovely Darlene. Listen, when we talk about Jesus, I know sometimes that's awkward for you, or invitation is the key. Whether you know Spanish or not, probably best to know your neighbor before you try to figure out the language. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Invitation is the key. People don't naturally wake up and say, I think I'd like to follow Jesus today. All of us got here some way, and most of us got here by invitation. Someone said, hey, come on over here. Look at this. And the invite from the very beginning, when Jesus showed up on the scene and started doing his thing, the invite was just, come on, come and see. It wasn't follow the rules. It wasn't stop doing that. It wasn't start doing this. It was just like, come on over, hang out with me, and experience what this is like. And people did, and it changed their life, and then it changed the world. So the goal, in reviewing where we've been, the goal was not to explain something, but to experience someone. And so often, we get caught up trying to defend a faith or a belief system or a religious set of rules. Well, that's not the way to connect with Jesus. Jesus needs to be experienced, not explained. Now, in the few minutes I have left, I'm pretty sure somewhere along the line, most of you are going to get offended by something I say. But don't feel bad, because I offend myself sometimes. I'll get done preaching, and I'll get on my truck to drive home, and I'll say to myself, boy, you just offended me. I said, no, I'm sorry, Kyle. I'm sorry I have to apologize to myself all the time. So I'm not intentionally trying to be offensive, but some of the stuff is like, it's pretty strong stuff. Beginning with this one. Our mission at Real Life, when we put it really bluntly, is we want to make it impossible to get to hell from the Lake Chelan Valley and the Quad Cities. We want to do everything possible to expose our communities to the love of Jesus and the truth of a relationship with Him, so that it changes their life. So that, because we believe there's a next life, there's eternal life, we would love it that no one ends up in hell. And no one likes to talk about hell. No one likes to hear about hell. I don't love talking about hell. Maybe you've been in churches where preachers love talking about hell, and that's all they talk about. I don't want to talk about hell. But at the same time, I don't want any of you to end up there. Nor anybody that lives in Chelan or Manson, or Aniat, or Arundel, or the Quad Cities, which are Pateros, Brewster, Mansfield, and Bridgeport. I don't know why Waterville gets left out, but Waterville, we don't want you to go to hell either. Like, it's just the Lake Chelan Valley and the Quad Cities? Yeah, listen, that's all we can do right now. That's all we got. Once we get that taken care of, we'll move to the rest of the state and the rest of the nation. But right now, that's our target audience, and that's our mission. So in talking about darkness and light, the Bible refers in the Old Testament and the New Testament, and Jesus talked about that people who have not experienced or chosen to follow Jesus are living in darkness. It doesn't make them evil. It makes them stuck in a place that's unenjoyable. And some of us may not even be aware of that. So in the last few minutes, I just want to talk about light and darkness. And if you're a follower of Jesus, you're called to be light. Let me give you a couple. Searchlights. Those of you that are here and you're like, uh-oh, I'm not a follower of Jesus. I just showed up so the person I work with would quit bugging me. Or I showed up because someone said they'd take me to brunch. All good, all fine. But you're here and you're like, this is what bugs me most about Christians. It's like they're always pushing their Christianity on me. It's like, who else is like that? CrossFitters or people who run marathons. You know what I'm saying? That's funny. You don't have to find out if someone's run a marathon. Just hang out with them 30 seconds. They'll let you know. My apologies, Stephanie Rogers. Listen, people that are really into something, they talk about it, right? Well, some of us are offended. If you're not yet a follower of Jesus, you're offended by Christians because it seems like they're so pushy or they always want to talk about it. But I don't think they're being jerks. Now, have there been Christians who have been obnoxious, people who stand with a microphone on Sunday mornings in front of congregations like me who are obnoxious and offensive? Yes. That's not Jesus. That's not experience with Jesus. Right? Most of us who follow Jesus want to talk about it because we've discovered a wonderful thing. And you should know about it. Listen, we all do that. Men or women, if you discover some kind of beauty secret, listen, if you discovered some kind of cream you rub it on your body that makes your man boobs go away and your love handles, I'm like, tell me about that. We can call it moves and landals. We'll make a fortune. All right? If you, come on, dudes, old dudes. If you found that, wouldn't you want to tell your buddies? You're like, it'd be offensive to walk up to Kyle and say, hey, this will help your man. No, it wouldn't. It would be so helpful. Tell me. If you go, you hunters, you go to Cabela's and you find out that I don't know anything about guns. The Magnum PIs are on sale at half price, all right? Wouldn't you call your buddies and tell them? Like, for the first time, Cabela's has these at half price? Yes, you would. Listen, people, real followers of Jesus, not hypocritical, judgmental followers. Real followers of Jesus want to talk about it because we discovered a wonderful thing, and it's changed our lives. Why would we not want to talk about that? Real quick. I use this illustration all the time. But when you say, or you hear, or you're watching online and you're thinking, yeah, but it's so offensive. Your faith is your faith. My faith is my faith. Just leave us alone. Okay. All I would want to say is, philosophically speaking, we don't even have to make this a church thing or a Jesus thing. Let's say you're over at my house for dinner, and you're sitting in my living room, and a fire starts in the kitchen. I'm in the kitchen, I see the fire start, it flames up over the stove, and now it's taken over my kitchen, and now the fire is moving towards the living room where you and your family are sitting. If I just ran out the back door, what do you think of me? Right? Like, what a horrible person I would be if I see there's danger coming and I don't do anything about it. Even if I come in and I say to you, there's a fire coming, come on, and you're like, oh, come on, you're just kidding around again. Or how do you know there's a fire? How do you know historically that that fire really existed? How do you know that someone just didn't make up the story about the fire? And I'm like, I don't care. I'm picking you guys up and I'm going to take you out no matter what because there's a fire coming. My question is, even if I'm wrong about Jesus, even if I'm wrong about heaven and hell, aren't I compelled to say something to you? Even if I am mistaken, if I really believe it, don't I have to speak up? Of course I do. Now, how I speak up and the tone I speak up with and how I treat people, that's a whole different thing. But if I really believe life's better following Jesus and makes you better at life, what a jerk I am to not tell you. If I really believe that you're in danger of darkness in this life and in the one to come, and I don't speak up, what a jerk I am. Got to speak up. So if you're searching, and this searchlight, that's for you. If I'm going to move quick, silent light. The silent light is church is where you talk about God. Work is where you talk about work. All right? I'm a Christian, and I talk about God when I'm at church or maybe with my other churchy friends. But everywhere else, I don't. And the problem with that is when you're a follower of Jesus, if you call yourself a follower of Jesus, you're in a relationship. And we want to make it personal and private. My faith is my faith. Okay, and that's fine. And I'm not judging you. I'm not putting you down. Live your life. But if you're like, it's rude to intrude or share what I believe with other people, that's a great way to live if you don't think there's a heaven and hell in the future. That makes sense. I think it's rude not to intrude. Next, schizophrenic light. This is when we don't understand we're in a relationship, not in a religion. That we're trying to follow a set of rules instead of enjoy a relationship. When you're in a relationship, you're in it wherever you go, right? You can't pick and choose. Let's say you're newly married. And ladies, your husband comes home and says, hey, just so you know, so glad we're married. The wedding, really fantastic. Honeymoon, that was really enjoyable. Now we're back and into normal routine. I got to let you know, when I'm here in the house, I'm all in. I'm yours. I'm in a relationship with you. But when I leave the house and go to work, not. I'm going to leave my ring in the car. I can't put your picture up at work because people know we're in a relationship. So I just need you to know, here in the house, I'm all you. Out of the house, not. Ladies, how you respond? Something like, since your ring's in the car, you might as well just go ahead and live there with it. That would be just fine. That makes no sense, right? Like, we pick and choose where to act or talk about Jesus. And the fact is, when you're in a relationship with Jesus, you're in a relationship with Jesus all the time. You're not perfect. Stumble, fall, bumps, bruises, all that stuff, okay. So, this isn't my idea. God came up with it way back in the day. Remember, in the Old Testament, even if you're not a church person, you remember this because there was a great movie about it. Moses says to Pharaoh, let my people go. Remember that whole thing? And all of God's people, the Israelites, were slaves in Egypt. And Moses goes to Pharaoh and says, let them go. Moses says no. And all these plagues came and water turned to blood. And all this stuff. It's just really horrible stuff. And finally Pharaoh says, just go. Moses gets these millions of Israelites out in the desert, and they're headed for a promised land. And the main reason he established a nation and a relationship with these people was so all the other nations would figure out what kind of God he was. And he set in motion this operation, this mission of be the light. Way back in the beginning. First initiated when they get out into the desert, and he says, we're going to make a nation. Here's the guidelines. Here's the way we're going to live with each other and with people around us. And way back in the day, he says, I will also make you a light for the Gentiles, people who aren't Jewish, people who aren't Israelites, everybody else. Why? That you may bring my salvation to the ends of the earth. That God showed up and says, listen, you're the light. You're the light to everybody else. You're not just a light to your own church people. You're not just a light to the other Israelites. You're not just a light to your own family. You're a light to everybody. So when the other nations look at you and say, wow, you guys are something, you'll say, wait till you meet my God. It was established a long time ago. Somewhere along the line, it later got abandoned. And people gave up. Followers of God gave up. Maybe lack of hope. Maybe when Jesus shows up on the scene, people who call themselves followers of God or who were supposed to be being the light were so beaten down with culture and life. The Roman Empire was just really knocking the living daylights out of them. They could barely make a living. They were under oppression. They were free, but they weren't free. The religious people who were supposed to be the light were just drilling them, and they couldn't please anybody, and it was so hard to live up to all the extra rules and laws that the system put on them. And so the very first sermon, when Jesus comes on the scene, his very first sermon, he's sitting on the side of a hill, and he's got these followers, and some of them are kind of like leaning in, but most of them are like, I don't know, what do you got, Jesus? It's been a long time since we Jews have heard from God. It's been a long time since Moses was out in the wilderness. It's been a long time since we've had any hope. And Jesus reinstates the be the light thing that was established way back with Moses. And he says, listen, you are the light of the world. A city on a hill can't be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. He reinstates the operation Be the Light with three key statements. The first being, you are the light of the world. If you've been raised in a church, it's like, wait a minute, I'm the light. I thought Jesus was the light of the world. At Christmas time, Jesus is the light of the world. I'm the light of the world? Yeah, you are. When you're with Jesus, you reflect, if Jesus is the light of the world, you reflect his light on you out to the rest of the world. You're the light of the world, and you get to partner with Jesus to do that. You're the light of the world. You were intended to be the light so others can understand what God is like. You've ran into Christians that promote themselves or churches that promote themselves and just, hey, look at us. That's not what this is. This is, I'm going to live and talk in such a way that demonstrates and reflects the goodness of God and the love of Jesus. That people say, what's the deal? And you say, yeah, I fell in love with Jesus. He changed my life. Well, and if somebody were to say something to you like, boy, your life is really different. Why are you Yeah, if you think I'm great, you got to meet my Jesus. You got to meet the guy that rescued me. You got to meet the Savior of the world, who I partner with. I've been forgiven by. 2, a city on a hill cannot be hidden. Everyone listening to Jesus knew what he was talking about. Around here, a city on a hill can't be hidden. What is that? The lookout. I'm not anti-lookout. Some of my best friends work for the lookout. We're moving our offices and eventually our church in the community center that is the basis of the lookout. We want to be friends with all the lookout people. But that's a light on a hill, right? It can't be hidden. In the New Testament times, when Jesus said that, everyone knew that if you're traveling, you want to travel by day and you want to get home before night. There's bad people and bad things out there. So when you're a distance away and you can see a city and you see the light because the city is up on a hill for protection more than anything, and you see the light out there, you're like, yeah, there's something I can head to. And Jesus says you're the light of the world, just like a city on a hill can't be hidden, because you are a beacon of hope for weary travelers. If you're a follower of Jesus, your light was always meant to be shared. What you discovered, how Jesus changed your life, was always meant to be given to somebody else. Finally, he says, neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Good. Light a candle to light up my house, and then I'm going to put a bowl over. It doesn't make any sense. It would make sense that if you're a real follower of Jesus, that your light, however dim or bright it is, you would at least expose your light to people who live in darkness. And Jesus ends this little phrase when he says, in the same way, let your light shine before men, that may see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven. It's like, man, look at why do you and your family live the way you do? Man, you think we're great. You got to see my Jesus. The original purpose was, hey, look at this great nation. And the nation of Israel said, yeah, I see our God. The early church stumbled in it. And then Jesus came on, gave up his life on the cross, forgiveness of sin, rose from the dead. He proved he wasn't just a dude. And then the early church started saying, yeah, we're the light. We're not promoting ourselves. We're promoting Jesus. So when Paul, who becomes a follower of Jesus after being a persecutor of Christians, comes on the scene and he writes a letter to this church in the city of Philippi, he comes along and he says, go out into the world uncorrupted. Be a breath of fresh air in this squalid and polluted society. The people aren't, the society is. Provide people with a glimpse of good living and of the living God. Carry the light-giving message into the night. If you're here not a follower of Jesus, you're like, I don't know what that means, but I wish that was me. I would love to have a light-giving message. I would love to have a beacon of hope to live by. I would love to get a glimpse of this living God you're talking about. Listen, here's 3 ways to live as a light, really quickly. To live in light, I'll give it to you in 3 Ds. It's the best way I can remember. And the living light in 3D is this. First D, develop friendships. Most of us, we talked about this in week 1, most of us who have been followers of Jesus for any length of time, by year 7, have no other friends who aren't Christians. You become a follower of Jesus, you're surrounded by a bunch of people who are not followers of Jesus, and pretty soon you find yourself only hanging out with Christian people, church people. That's not good. That's not good. Develop friendship. You can bargain all you want with God. If you're a follower of Jesus, you can bargain all you want with, like, hey, I don't like talking about my faith. It's awkward. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. Don't want to embarrass myself. Can I just read my Bible more? I'll give more money. You can bargain with God all you want, but the fact is you can't get out of it. Because if you're a follower of Jesus, you're a light. You can hide it. You can try to diminish it, but you're a light. And light only works in dark places. You're like, I show up to my real life group, and I'm the light of my real life group. They don't need your light there. They're already lit. That's a great group. Find that one. It doesn't mean they don't need you there, all right? And of course, real life groups are important. And we want you to grow in your faith, and we want to share with other believers. And there may be some non-believers in your group. Okay. But dark places are where people who don't know Jesus, who live without hope, who don't understand there's a future, that there's a heaven and a hell. If you don't have any people in your life that are living in dark places, you need to take more steps out of your circle of comfort in your life. 2, discern next steps. After you develop a friendship with somebody, what do? Here's some good things. Just ask questions. Just listen to people's stories. Why do they believe what they do? Why do they work where they do? Why do they what were they like growing up? You talk to some guy in a plane that has struggled with loss in his life, and you're like, hey, I remember a book I read about that. Would you mind if I sent it to you? One of my daughters has this friend who, over a year ago, who's not a follower of Jesus, said to her, you know what? Your dad sounds like a good guy to talk to if I was ever going to talk about God. And so she told me that. So a couple weeks before Christmas, before I headed down to Boise, I said, hey, if your buddy wants to talk, I'm coming to town. She wasn't even in town. And she's like, Dad, that's weird. I said, I'm just saying, he said he wanted to talk. So she says to him, hey, my dad says if you want to talk, he's coming to town. So I got coffee with him. Just talked. He had questions about God. I had questions about him. No, I didn't slam him on the forehead or take an offering or anything. I just sat in a coffee shop and said, you know what? I hope in your journey here that you discover these truths about a real Jesus. Last D, discover stories. And here's the problem. Here's my problem. I bet you it's your problem. In order to hear people's stories, we have to leave this circle of comfort and move to the zone of the unknown. You know what I'm saying? Really, really difficult, but so impactful. Maybe you have some tools. Maybe you have things you can talk about. Sometimes when we talk about sharing truth with other people and everything, I used to get caught up with, like, I'll talk with people about Jesus, and they're just like, all right, have a good day. I remember Olivia, my youngest daughter, was dating Ryan, who's now my son-in-law. The greatest son-in-law in the world. I dare you to change my mind. Well, before he was the boyfriend. And he was this, I doubt he's listening, cocky little, Darlene didn't like him. I'll give him a shot because he's hanging out with my daughter. But he's just another flavor for Livy. You know what I'm saying? They dated a couple weeks. They dated a couple months. Livy says, hey, Dad. Calls me up. Ryan's got a question about God. I said, well, tell him this. Next day, hey, Ryan's wondering, tell him this. She says, Dad, can you just meet with him and talk to him? Yeah, I'll meet with this little cocky son of a... Yeah, I'll meet with him. I don't know him at all. I meet with him at Starbucks in Chelan, and I go full youth pastor mode. I'm explaining the gospel with the two cliffs, and there's a gap in between, and that gap is sin, and you can't get across on your own. And I did do versus done, and I had it all. I was drawn, and I think I did a miracle, turned the coffee into wine at one point and everything. I am on my game. I'm going. And we get done, and he's like, "Oh, thanks." I said, "Ryan, I don't care if you date my daughter or not. Knowing Jesus will change your life so much more important than who you date or who you marry." He's like, "All right." A month later, Livy calls up. He's going to school down in Ellensburg. Livy calls up and says, "Hey, Ryan's got something to tell you." Gets on the phone and says, "Hey, just want you to know I gave my life to Jesus." And half of me was like, "That is so fantastic." And the other half is, "What the heck? I did everything for you. I had the two cliffs. I said I did the do versus done." Listen, you don't have any idea in people's journey of faith what number they're on. If number 10 is giving their life to Jesus, you may experience them at a 5 and move them to a 6. Thank God there were other people that Ryan's roommate said, "Hey, you want to go to church with me today?" He goes to church down in Ellensburg. The pastor says, "Anyone want to give their life to Jesus?" And Ryan was at number 9, moving to 10 that day. Thank God. It matters. I'll give you 3 quick things. If you're a follower of Jesus, you got to be the light. Here's what to do now. We got the next steps on blue cards. I've been gone a few weeks, so and thank you, Pastor Graham, Pastor Billy, Pastor Megan for filling in for me while I was gone. I thought they were awesome. There's blue cards. If you've got a question, you have a prayer request, but all the next steps are on the blue card as well. All right? So let me give you 3 quick ones. If you're a follower of Jesus, just step up and shine. You're the light. You're like, "I am." Yeah, you are. I've never really known I was a... Yeah. You may have had your light under a bucket for a while. No more. God says you're the light at where you work, in your classroom, at the PTA, at your kids' sporting events, at social gatherings, at school, in every class, every team. You're the light. You point people in the direction of God. You don't preach at them. You don't guilt them. You don't twist their arm. You just show up. Be the light. If you've lost your passion and you're just trying to survive, and maybe that's why you tuned in this morning, and maybe that's just why you showed up and you're just on the edge, man, come back. Maybe we find a real life group for you, and as you grow a little bit, your light, you can understand how bright your light is. Because listen, your light isn't about how good you are or where you've been. Your light is based on Jesus, and it is a bright, good light. 2, step out of the shadows. Whatever fears you've got as a believer, as a follower of Jesus, maybe you got some habit that keeps you from sharing, that something's pulling you down. Maybe you need to talk with a buddy, a Christian friend, somebody. Maybe your fear or your awkwardness of talking about Jesus, maybe you just need to share that with your small group or with somebody you trust. But you're the light, and you're put in dark places, and I hope you find lots of them where you can show up and be a life-giving light, so that when people say to you, "You seem so different," or "Why do you go to that church?" or what, you say, "Man, my church is great, but you ought to meet my Jesus." That's what makes our church go. That's the only reason we show up. Finally, if you're here this morning, you're not yet a follower of Jesus, man, what a jerk I would be if I didn't invite you to be a follower of Jesus. We ain't trying to grow a church and be impressive. We're trying to reach a community of people. No cult. We don't want anything from you. We have something for you. And that is salvation, rescue that's found in a loving Savior, the Son of God, Jesus Christ. And it seems so simple because it's so magnificent that when you stop in your life and you say, "I understand that my past life and present situation, the sin or mistakes or whatever stuff that goes against the direction that God has for me in my life, that gets in the way of me enjoying a relationship with God. When you admit that and you realize that Jesus is the answer, is the rescue for that situation, you become a follower of Jesus. Like, that's it. Yeah, because salvation, you being rescued, you starting a relationship with Jesus isn't based on your goodness. It's based on the perfection of Jesus Christ. I wish it weren't true, but it is. There's a heaven and there's a hell. I wish that weren't true. I believe it because Jesus said it. And as harsh as that sounds, no one needs to end up in hell. God provided a way, a rescue, so that you can say, listen, not only do you have a guarantee of what your life will be like when you take your last breath, but you have the assurance that even in dark times, in dark places, in dark, painful moments, Jesus walks with you through that. Because as a follower of Jesus, he's with you. No more darkness in your soul. You may be surrounded by darkness, not in your soul. Because Jesus rescued you from it. I'm praying you make that decision today. Let's pray.